It was good. I'm back. Triple P, Paul Pickett podcast. I'm your host, Paul Pickett. Don't forget the Paul Pickett podcast is sponsored by promopals.biz and newletter.com. Don't forget to check out my audio version of my podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, Odyssey, Castbox, Deezer, iHeart, Player FM, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, Stitcher, and TuneIn, as well as the video version goes to my YouTube channel, Facebook pages, and Instagram. And hit follow if you're following it on those platforms, and hit subscribe, the click now button in the right hand corner. I'm going to get into this is going to be my first episode with just all political topics. So I have a few political topics. Really, the theme of this episode is the double standard of Democrats. And so I'm gonna start with like the CDC eviction moratorium. And before I get started, let me give you a little bit of context since I'm getting into the first political one. I'm not a Democratic, not a Republican. If I had to say which side I lean more, I would say I lean more to the right, more to the Republicans. I don't agree with hardly anything the Democrats say. Um, I voted. I didn't vote for Trump nor Biden. If I had to choose, I would choose Trump over Biden. I voted one time in my life Barack Obama, and I totally regret that. He put on a award-winning Oscar acting role. I felt like if I should have voted for anybody, it should have been Clinton and whatnot. So let me get with that note. In that context, CDC eviction moratorium. First of all, the CDC doesn't even have no authority to dictate any laws or enforce anything like this. They have no, like, it's like the video I just watched recently. Like, so when you can't pay your rent, you call your doctor? Because that's what we're talking about with CDC. We're talking about medical people, medical health people. Like, they have no authority. That's why Tennessee and a few other states stepped in, and the judge like, no, y'all got no authority. And any landlords or any states that are letting this go on, they're they're clueless. They're clueless. They don't understand. CDC, first of all, has no authority, to dictate this. Second of all, it's such a double standard and hypocrisy because landlords got more rent and bills than a person renting a house. I repeat, landlords have more rent and bills than a person renting the house. A landlord might be paying mortgage on the house that the person's renting from them, and they might be more likely paying mortgage on another house that they live in, with a car note, with bills, insurances, and all that. They got way more bills because they got to pay two mortgages typically, unless the house that they're renting out is totally paid off. But a lot of times, landlords are still paying mortgage on the house while people are paying them rent, and the rent that they're paying is just paying a portion. Is just paying the majority or a portion of the mortgage. You know, so yeah, it's a double standard. Like landlords don't got rent and bills and whatnot. Let's screw the landlords. Let them, not be able to pay their mortgages and their rent. Let them go homeless. Let them get evicted. You know, as long as the working man, is okay. Like we got to stop putting the working man above the guy who actually had goals and actually invested his money into um, something that would generate him revenue or a business or something. Like the working man doesn't get just put on a pedestal above the guy who's actually invested his money to make more money into a business or bought a house that he's renting out or bought property. No, you don't. No, you don't get put on a pedestal above the guy who's actually out there trying to achieve goals and accomplish goals, man. And I know y'all people, the poor people, always want to blame the rich. But most of these people that are poor and the average working American, I know most of them. Most of the friends that I know in life haven't tried to accomplish or achieve one single goal in their life. Not no real goal that achieves financial success. CDC eviction moratorium is it's an overreach. It's hypocritical. It's a double standard. You know, like the landlord doesn't gotta pay rent and bills. You know what I'm saying? Come on, man, that's a double standard here. Um, I'm gonna get into this next one. I saw this video off of Officer Tatum, the Tatum Report YouTube channel. Go check him out if you haven't. He had this video basically breaking down. And it's not a video that he created himself. It's just a video that he reacted to. And the video was basically showing how hypocritical and the double standard the Democrats have. Like they basically shows in the video that every single Democrat that you could think of, every popular Democrat, every Democrat you could think of, on camera, on camera, verbally on record saying we should not trust the vaccine because Donald Trump is president. Now, it's the same vaccines as this Biden is now pushing. Same vaccines. So why is it that all of a sudden you shouldn't trust the vaccine when Trump was in office, but now all of a sudden you should trust it when Biden's in office? Hypocritical hypocrisy, double standard. That's all it is. It just goes to show you these people, they are complete liars. They go from one view to the next, one opinion to the next. One day, it's apples, the next is oranges to them. It's such a hypocrisy that every Democrat on the planet is literally on camera, on record saying we should not trust the vaccine because Donald Trump is president. So why the hell should we run and go trust it just because Sleepy Joe is president? What this idea that Joe Biden is such a trustworthy person is bogus. It's fairy tales, imaginary, made up. It's false. It's such a double standard. You can't trust the vaccine when Trump is in office. Now you want to try to force it upon us and get mad because we don't want to take it and we don't trust it. When y'all literally told us not to trust it. And now y'all want to backtrack what y'all say and act like y'all didn't say it. You know what I'm saying? That's how such a double standard hypocrites these Democrats are. Now let me get on to the next one. Democrats' hypocrisy on the election. Here goes another one. When Donald Trump got elected, this is fact. Hillary Clinton said the election was stolen. Democrats were out there saying that Russia colluded to help Donald Trump get in. Democrats were literally saying Donald Trump stole the election, Russia helped him. But as soon as Donald Trump says somebody stole the election from him, all hell breaks loose and everybody wants to say, he's trying to destroy our way of democracy. Okay, well, if he was, then so were Democrats. Because they were doing the same thing, and so was Hillary Clinton. They were all saying Russia colluded to help President Trump win. The election was stolen. Russia helped. This, that, and the third. No proof of that whatsoever, but Russia helped. Sounds like hypocrisy and a double standard to me. I mean, are Democrats this clueless? Do they literally, they got Alzheimer's? They literally forget the things they just said last year or last month or months ago? It's such hypocrisy. I mean, let's get the rundown of this so far. I mean, CDC eviction notice. It's double standard. Let's not evict the working man, but the landlords, screw if they got rent and bills. Hypocrisy, double standard. They got more rent and bills. Tatum Report breakdown video of Democrats sitting there, saying we shouldn't trust the vaccine because of Trump in office. The same vaccines that Biden is pushing. Same ones. Nothing different. But all of a sudden we should trust it just because Biden and Kamala Harris is in office. No, double standard, hypocrisy, Democrats' hypocrisy in election. They were saying that Russia colluded and the Trump stole the election. But as soon as Trump does it, all hell breaks loose. Last but not least, vaccine passports versus voter IDs. Dems are out here saying, oh, voter IDs are racist. They're racism at its best. Okay, let's think about this. Let me kick my feet up on my table here. I gotta relax. Where is the vaccine passport starting? Anybody, anybody, anybody? New York City. New York City. Now, it is a fact in New York City that 70% of African Americans are not vaccinated. So if you have a vaccine passport in New York City and it's going to affect 70% of African Americans from going to maybe the grocery store or going to the restaurant or going to the gym to work out or whatever places that they put restrictions on, traveling on a train or wherever they're going to put these restrictions, working at a job. So it's going to restrict 70% of African Americans, and that's not racist? That's not racism? Stop it! Such a hypocrites, man, y'all are. Double standard. And let's be honest, man. The voter ID isn't going to prevent 70% of African Americans from voting. And what's racist about the people pushing the voter IDs is they're pushing this narrative that colored people are not smart enough to take a cell phone and take a picture of their ID or scan their ID on a cell phone. They don't know how to scan a copy of ID. They don't know how to use a copy machine or use a scanner on the phone. That's racist, implying that people of color are not smart enough to use scanners or copy machines. And when Kamala Harris goes in, everybody doesn't got Kinkos. They don't need fucking Kinkos, Kamala. They don't need a motherfucking Kinkos when you got a scanner on your freaking phone. Every phone's got a scanner where you can take a picture with your camera. That's the same damn thing as scanning. Taking a camera picture. Because what is a scanner going to do? Take a picture. Duh. 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 So let's stop it, man. What's racism is the people that are saying that colored people are not smart enough to get identification or they're not smart enough to scan identification. And then let's break down all the things you need an ID for. Y'all ready? You need an ID to rent a house. You need an ID to rent a car. You need an ID to buy a car. As a matter of fact, you need an ID and a credit card to rent a car, and you need an ID to get the credit card. So you need an ID for two things just to rent a car. To get a credit card, to rent the car, and you gotta have ID and a credit card to rent a car. Alright, so you need an ID to rent a house. You need an ID for car insurance. You need an ID to get to the club. You need an ID to buy alcohol, to buy cigarettes. Let's see. I mean, there's a lot of other things you need IDs for. You need an ID to get social security number. You need forms of identification just to get a picture ID. You need an ID to get a driver's license. You know, there's so many things that you need an ID for. This idea that we add one more thing, it's racist. It's racism. Then what? All forms of identification of ID are racist? And if we can't identify people in this world, I mean, you need an ID to get a job, right? You need an ID to get a job. How do we know if you can't identify somebody when they go to fill out an application of a job, how do we know who to make the check out to? Duh. So we got to be able to identify people. And then you got criminals. You know, how can we identify people who commit crimes? You know? So, yeah, identification is not racist. The vaccine passport is far more racist if we're saying the vaccine ID. If you're going to say the vaccine ID is racist, then the passport, I mean not the vaccine ID, but you're gonna say the voter ID is racist, and the vaccine passport is the king of racism. Because literally, it's starting in New York with 70% of African Americans unvaccinated, and I'm not that I disagree with them because I'm unvaccinated. And let me get into that. Why I'm unvaccinated? Because number one, it's not 100% fully approved. Number two, y'all came out with three options. Y'all not even sure yourselves. That's why you come out with three different ones. You're not even sure yourselves. So if you're not sure, I can't be sure. Another thing is I just don't put anything in my body. I would like to know what's in it, you know. So I like to wait till it's fully approved. I like to know what's in it. I like to wait a little bit more time to see, if there's what kind of side effects because it has been rushed out, you know. And another thing is we've had things like this in the past that were just as bad or worse, and it was just stay away from people and wear a mask. And we got through that. So, yeah. And another thing is, I don't live in fear. I'm not living in fear like everybody else. You know, you can't fight death. Like, we're all promised death. That's the only thing that we're all promised. Death will come to this all. But so yeah, it's such a double standard. And I ain't saying that Republicans are perfect and they don't make mistakes and they ain't doing dirty stuff. And yeah, they are. They are. There's a lot of them doing dirt, but they're not pushing these narratives right here. They're not pushing the CDC eviction moratorium, and the CDC don't even got the authority to do that. They didn't sit there and, you know, one minute say the vaccine can't be trusted because this guy's president, but the same vaccine has to be trusted because this other guy's president, which is a hypocritical double standard move. They sure as hell, like now they did do the same thing as the Democrats saying the election was stolen. Now they did do that. I will say that. Republicans did come out and say election. A lot of Republicans said that, but a lot of Democrats said it when Trump won in the first time anyways. And if you saying they're not, you're lying through your teeth. Because the person who lost clearly said it. And a lot of other people came out in the media was saying Russia helped Donald Trump win the election with no proof. So it's okay for y'all to say Donald Trump stole the election from Hillary. But as soon as Donald Trump says Biden stole the election from him, all hell breaks loose and he's destroying our way to democracy. No, y'all are because you're hypocrites and your double standards. And then your vaccine passport versus your voter ID, you're hypocrites and double standards. Because we need ID for so many things in this world, and the vaccine passport is literally just going to prevent people from living in society. The voter ID will prevent people from voting. They'll still be able to go to the grocery store, go to the gym, go to the restaurant, and go everywhere else. But the vaccine passport, if you ain't even got a vaccine passport and you got a voter ID, you won't even be able to go to vote. I repeat, if you got a voter ID and no vaccine passport, you won't even be able to go to vote in New York. So think about that. If New York requires a voter ID and they require a vaccine passport, right? Or any state that requires both, if you don't got the vaccine passport, you ain't even going to be able to use your voter ID. So how you going to sit here and act like the voter ID is the problem when the vaccine passport will prevent you from even voting even if you have a voter's ID? Think about that one. And that's not a false narrative. That is facts. That's how it will play out. If a state requires both of them, you could have your voter's ID all you want, but if you ain't got the vaccine passport, you ain't going to be able to go vote. Because they were going to require to see that when you go to vote. Because they were going to require everywhere. Because they're using this to control us, everything. They want to control everything about us. And this ain't going to work. This ain't going to work. Some states follow through with, New York. And even California's out there trying to put the mask mandates back up. You know what I'm saying? Because clearly, now think about this: California is trying to put mask mandates back up, not just for unvaccinated, for the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. Why are they trying to put mask mandates up for the vaccinated people? Why? Because clearly this is not a cure. The vaccine, that's another thing. The vaccination is not a cure. It's just a temporary solution. And I'm not with temporary solutions. I'm a businessman. I'm self-employed businessman. I do marketing and advertising for a living. In marketing and advertising, we don't accept temporary solutions. So I don't accept temporary solutions in life. I only accept permanent solutions. And these vaccines are not permanent solutions. They're just temporary. Because now they're talking about they'll have to give you a boot. They're trying to create boosters that'll boost the vaccine. So why do I got to take a vaccine and then a booster? So I got to take a booster that boosts the vaccine because the vaccine clearly doesn't cure. And clearly there's people going to the hospital, being hospitalized with the vaccination. This is clearly out of Charlemagne the God's mouth. And if Uncle Charlotte says it out of his mouth that he knows people that personally went to the hospital with vaccinations, I believe Uncle Charlotte 100%. I'm not saying that everything coming out of Charlemagne the God's mouth is facts and truth. But if he says he knows people who have experienced things, you know, his friends have experienced things, I totally believe him 100% on that. I don't believe just sometimes maybe some of his political views might not be totally factual or true, you know, but for the most part, I put a lot of trust in Charlemagne the God's honesty, his honesty, you know. And we even an honest person can tell a fib or tell a lie because they might have some misinformation or the wrong information or they might be missing some information. There might be some information lacking. But yeah, I want y'all to hit that click now subscribe button in the right hand corner. This was definitely my first political episode. We broke down the CDC eviction moratorium, which they got no power to even. The people that are letting them enforce that are complete idiots and morons because they ain't even got no power to enforce that. Check out Officer Tatum, breaking down the videos of the Democrats clearly saying we can't trust the virus because Donald Trump is the president, but we have no choice but to trust it because Biden, hypocrites. And then the Dems clearly saying the election was stolen when Trump won, but as soon as Trump says election stolen, all hell breaks loose, hypocrites. And then the Dems clearly saying the voter ID is racist, but they're pushing this vaccine passport, which is clearly even far. It's clearly in New York is showing a sign of racism, and probably I would say this vaccine passport I don't really believe in systematic racism, but this vaccine passport, like not this day and age. Yes, America at one point was systematically racist, but this day and age, I don't believe every institution, everybody's just out to just keep people of color down. That's false. But a vaccine passport, if they pushing that in New York, that is systematic racism because it affects 70% of African Americans. It's definitely systematic racism. If you know, and in a place where there's 100% if there's 100% African Americans vaccinated, it wouldn't be systematic racism. But in the fact that New York knows the governor, everybody in New York knows the 70% African Americans are vaccinated. They know that. And Democrats always push this agenda like they're the forefront. They're the forefront and the leaders of racial equality. Stop it. That's bogus, false narrative, man. We got to stop acting like the Democrats weren't the ones during the Civil War that were voting against freeing the slaves. We got to stop acting like Democrats didn't mind slavery continuing. They just wanted the war to end and get back to business as usual. We got to stop acting like, you know, the Republicans were not the ones who freed the slaves during the Civil War. We got to stop acting like Abraham Lincoln wasn't a Republican, you know? So, yeah, man, like Democrats have never been the forefront of racial equality for colored people and minorities. You know, they're just using and politicizing that to get votes right now. They don't care. If Democrats cared about black people or color, yeah, black people in America or Democrats, yeah, New York is a Democratic state. If they cared about black people, they wouldn't be pushing this vaccine passport. That's literally going to affect and they're literally trying to force, I don't even know the percentage of whites in New York, but I guarantee it's not 70% of whites in New York that are not vaccinated. It's probably more like 40%, maybe 30%, I would think. So they clearly know this is going to affect African Americans, and they clearly know who they're trying to force to get vaccinated in New York with this vaccine passport. So stop. We got to stop acting like the Democrats are the leaders of, racial equality when they're not, man. They're not. Because they're the ones sitting there saying that people of color are not smart enough to get IDs scanned. Like people don't have. A lot of people have printers and scanners at the house, and if not, you got a scanner on your phone. And if not, you could go somewhere. You could go to. There's not always Kinko's. There's a independent shops. Every city's got independent places too that you can get something printed at. But this idea that everybody in the world's got a cell phone, but they can't scan or take a picture of their ID is bogus. It's false fairy tales. Once again, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Hit the click now subscribe button. Don't forget this podcast is sponsored by, promopalace.biz and newletter.com. Check out both of those sites. Don't forget the audio version of this podcast goes to Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, Odyssey, Castbox, Deezer, iHeartPlayer, FM, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, Stitcher, TuneIn, and more. You can Google Paul Pickett Podcast. You see the name behind me, Triple P, Paul Pickett Podcast. I am your host, Paul Pickett. For Shizzle, I got to also shout out one of my favorite liquor brands, the Dizzle. Check out DizzleBrand.com. It's a mixture of cognac, agave tequila, orange liquor, mango mix, and crisp lemon. DizzleBrand.com. Follow them on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. They also got recipes on there. Be on the lookout for Dizzle Brand coming soon to a ABC store and a bar or a club near you. And also be looking out for Dizzle Brand merchandise coming soon. T-shirts, hats, hoodies, and whatnot. DizzleBrand.com. Check out newletter.com, New Letter Apparel. Online marketing promotions, promopalace.biz. Hit the click now subscribe button in the right hand corner. Also, if you're on Instagram and Facebook when you watch my podcast, hit that follow. Once again, I'm the one and only Paul Pickett. This is Triple P, Paul Pickett Podcast, where I bring you nothing but music, sports, politics, news, and whatever. Once again, thank you for tuning in. Peace, and I'm out.